Okay, so Gretchen asked a really good question of how to get into senior level project management roles. So I'll talk about like when you should start looking for senior level roles. I'll talk about how to quantify and qualify your experience for those roles. And then I'll talk about whether or not you should look internally or externally. So quick background for those that are new here. I've been managing my own project management career for the past decade. I've been in senior level roles for the past 5 years. I have my own project management consulting agency, and I've been doing career coaching, not just for project managers, for the past 6 years. So when you should start looking for senior level roles, I would say you, Gretchen, are in a great position to start looking now because you have very marketable experience being in government and IT. You have your PMP and you have over 5 years. So generally, I would say 5 to 8 year mark, you should definitely be trying to move into more senior level or at least more kind of marketable roles for sure. I think the misconception is that you have to have like a decade long of experience, which is not true. I will say that the market is very competitive, but I think again, if you have marketable and competitive experience, then I will go ahead and start looking into those senior level roles now. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to quantify the existing experience that you already have. So I wouldn't necessarily focus your resume or your interview answers on like the day-to-day basic project management functions, like managing schedules, project documentation, managing stakeholders, risk, budget, things like that. I would really focus on the impact that your project management day to day functions have brought the organization. So, how did it increase revenue, decrease costs? How did it increase productivity and save time, for your end users, for example? How did it increase quality or decrease areas? How did you get more clients? Again, what was the impact, not just like what your day to day project management tasks were. So that's one thing. I would also figure out how you can expand the scope and scale of your project management experience. So if you're managing, like, for example, projects within a department, figure out how you can get onto the projects that are impacting the entire organization. So, what are those enterprise wide, strategic, innovative projects that your organization is currently working on? And how can you either be the project manager or contribute to the project management of those projects? That's why it's really important to always know kind of where your organization is going from a strategic perspective and also where your industry is going, because when it came to like moving up, I really had to be very specific about the projects that I took on because I wanted to make sure that I was doing projects that were going to be very marketable for me in the long run. This is why I always preach to make sure that you are determining your like project management niche and becoming a subject matter expert again in general within your industry. And how I do this very practical as an example for me in AI, I make sure that I always have the latest newsletters, white papers, research articles on, AI, healthcare, IT, healthcare, digital transformation. That way I always know what's going on within my market. I also make sure that I'm also like partnering or becoming involved locally and on a national level with those kind of industry standard organizations within my industry. That way, I always know like what's going on. I'm always connecting with those industry leaders so that I'm not just seen as a facilitator, but I'm seen as a thought leader in that space. Okay, so let's talk about where to find these roles. So obviously you could do this internally. How you would do that is you would come up with like a 12-month advancement proposal that you would talk to your boss about in your review or your one-on-one. And you would say, I really want to be able to move into a senior level role within the next 12 months. And here's my plan to get there. This is the education that I'm going to focus on. These are the projects that I would like to focus on. And, these are the people that I would like to connect with within the organization. So you could do it that way. I will be honest, though, that sometimes it can be hard to move up internally in general, but especially in project management, because at least in my experience, you have other fellow project managers that have been there for decades and not going nowhere, don't really care about moving up. And again, that's no shade. It's just what it is sometimes. So sometimes in general, it can be hard to move up internally. But if you were to move up, that would be the way to do it. I would also look at organizations, that have an advancement plan for project managers. That way you don't get stuck. But that would be the way to move internally. I would say externally, you could do two things. One is you could become a contract project manager and you could partner with staffing agencies that hire PMs in the government and IT space. You work in a highly regulated field, Gretchen, so you could also probably look at healthcare or finance too. So yeah, I would partner with staffing agencies and be a contract PM. You're going to make a lot more money, but there's pros and cons to it. So let me know if you want a separate video on that. You could also obviously move externally to another full-time opportunity. You want to think about like if you work for a large company, for example, what are those smaller, mid-size or startup companies that are within your industry that could really leverage the projects that you've already worked on? So again, instead of starting over, if you want to move into senior level roles, I would say leverage the existing experience that you already have and think about the companies that would most benefit from that. So hopefully this was helpful. Let me know what questions you have in the comments below.